by the way, the diet soda is harmful because it actually turns out that all the data that's starting to accumulate is that the non-nutritive sweeteners that don't add, quote, calories into your body, so not fuel, supposed to be better, right? My diet, whatever, blank, tastes good. I love it. Well, I'll tell you what, you're not absorbing any of the calories, the energy. It's actually what they call it, empty calories. Like this got nothing. All right. But those artificial sweeteners, the data is showing that it poisons our gut bacteria down below. When that ecosystem is poisoned, that's like dropping bleach, over the Great Barrier Reef.
Wow.
You're starting to kill the organisms there. Those organisms are responsible for maintaining a healthy immunity, helping you lower inflammation. They produce the short-chain fatty acids. They help you heal faster. And even your gut microbiome text messages your brain to release social hormones. So this is just one example of something that's not so healthy. Both sugar-sweetened beverages and artificially sweetened beverages.
Is one worse than the other? If you had to pick.
If I had to pick, I would prefer a natural sugar sweetened beverage. I'll tell you why. Sugar is basically like overwhelming your metabolism. Okay, so a typical can of soda will have like 9 teaspoons of refined sugar. That's a lot. If I gave you an empty glass and I gave you 9 teaspoons of sugar and said, eat it, buddy.
Yeah.
You're going to go like, no, man, that's torture. All
No,
right.
thanks.
That's what we're doing actually with soda.
It's crazy.
Right? Your body will get over it. Like it will not like it when all that sugar hits your bloodstream. Your insulin is going to, your sugar will spike. Your insulin will go haywire a little bit. But you know what? You'll recover. Don't worry. All right. The gut microbiome thing, when you poison that gut microbiome, that's a whole other order of damage.
Wow.
That's why that's what I would avoid the artificial sweeteners.
Sometimes I drink these non-nutritive sodas, so 0-calorie sodas that are sweetened with stevia. Are those all right?
So the data is still coming in on stevia, monk fruit, some of the other non-nutritive sweeteners like naturally sweet. They're super potent. Looks okay. They look okay. Like they don't have the same degree of harm on the gut microbiome, and that's really what I think a lot of researchers are looking at is there a harm, an unanticipated damage to the gut microbiome? Because we now know that the gut microbiome is so incredibly important, actually for cognitive function as well, and our mood. So it's not just regular metabolism and your blood lipids and your ability to heal, but really, really important. So what I would say though is that for people that are thinking about stevia, however we pronounce it, not so much in a can of something, but if you're going out to buy stevia in the supermarket, be very, very careful to read the ingredient label of the package that it comes in, because many things say stevia on the front. All right, but if you take a look on the side and read the ingredients, there's a lot more than stevia in it.
Wow. Yeah, I know sometimes they package it with they'll package it with monk fruit or erythritol, which is a sugar alcohol. But very interesting. Would you say the dose makes the poison with these kinds of things? Like diet sodas, like if somebody's not a regular diet soda drinker, but every once in a while, once a week maybe, they like to treat themselves.
Yeah.
It helps maybe with even though we don't like we're not fans of the D word, it helps with like diet adherence. Is that something that you think is the risks outweigh the benefits?
Yeah, well, look, I'm somebody who practices reasonableness, and I always say to people and my patients, I always tell them, life is for the living. So you want to make sure that you're really enjoying your life, and everyone does some things that's not so good for them. I think if you spend most of your time shoring up your body's strengths, you can actually withstand and rebound and from taking a hit or two.
Yeah,
not going to be a big deal.
I agree with that.
But I do think that awareness is a big thing. Once you are aware that that there's certain things that are not so good for your body, you want to be away from it. By the way, we were just talking about sodas for a second. There's other damaging substances. Ultra processed foods is another one that actually can be very, very damaging to your metabolism and also to your body fat.
Talk about those.
Well, first, I think you mentioned this at the beginning, they tend to take the place of whole foods, fresh foods. And so when you actually have, when the diet sort of the modern diet becomes predominantly ultra processed foods, stuff in a box that you heat up that's been pre-made out of a factory. And many times, I always tell people, please look at the ingredient that. And if there's like 20, if there's 20 items as ingredients, and you can't pronounce most of them, or if you spot there's artificial preservatives, artificial sweeteners, artificial flavorings, in Europe, they actually ban a lot of the artificial flavorings and colorings that we actually have commonly in the United States.
I've heard that.
Right? So this is like, okay, now, why does certain part of the world ban this to protect their citizens? And how come, like that's a choice that we make if we're going to eat it. So I would say, look at the ingredient label, trust but verify. All right. And that verification will actually keep you out of trouble. In my book, I take people on a tour of the grocery store to look for metabolism activating foods. There's 150 of them. But what I do is I actually take people into the forbidden middle aisles, right? People used to say, shop the perimeter. I want to tell people you can actually shop the middle of the store. There is real stuff, good stuff in there. I call the chapter Treasure Hunt. So you want to find the real gold from the fool's gold. Don't get the fool's gold. Get the real stuff. And so the point is that what you want to do is to avoid that as much as possible, that ultra processed stuff. Too many people make a daily habit of eating mostly ultra processed food.
And what do those foods typically look like?
They're in a box, they're in a can, they're in a bag. They are loaded with artificial preservatives. They're machined, extruded, reshaped. They're colored, spray painted, mixed with our different types of colors. And there's a lot of flavor enhancers as well, And I think and by the way, that tends to develop habits because we become addicted to certain flavors. Our brain responds to certain signals that these chemicals that are placed in ultra processed foods make us avidly seek them out.
Interesting. So they make us inclined to overeat.
Well, they make us inclined to pick that product, but once we're there, it becomes hard to overeat. I mean, most of us don't understand that, this new science of the metabolism breaks it down, that the food we're eating is our fuel and it packs into our fat cells. Like once you have that picture in your mind, like it makes it a little, you can kind of check yourself a little bit about taking that extra serving or extra helping or extra bag of something.
Yeah. So what are these hidden nuggets hiding within the aisles of our supermarkets? Because I typically recommend people dipping in very occasionally, but ultimately doing the bulk of their shopping around the perimeter of the supermarket. But what are these foods that you've identified as being particularly valuable?
All right. So first of all, the foods I've worked on are all been studied in the lab, but also have human evidence that they're beneficial in people. So, I as a scientist, the lab is cool, but the proof in the pudding. The rubber meets the road is when actually you find that the benefit is actually found in people. So 150 foods in my book, all that are benefiting your metabolism, burning harmful body fat, activating your metabolism. All right. So, and the way that I write about it, and then I'll tell you what, we'll get to the middle aisle, is I write about this to take the reader on a tour of the grocery store. So remember when you were a kid, you hopped into the shopping cart with your mom pushing you through the aisles. That's what I do with this book. You hop into my shopping cart, I take you around, and I just tell you what to put into the cart. All right. And so obviously, and I'm 100% with you, shopping in the perimeter, going to the produce section, looking for the fruits and vegetables and legumes and all that kind of root vegetables. Absolutely. That's where a ton of good stuff is. It's almost obvious, although there's a lot of surprising new science about that as well. But what I also do is I take people into the middle aisle, that forbidden section. And I think this is something that is very important to me is that if you want to stay on top of the new science of the metabolism and fitness and health, don't get stuck to these old kind of paradigms like stay away from the middle aisle. No, go into the middle aisle. Be aware that there's research has actually shown there's some good stuff in there. There's a lot of bad stuff in there, but there's good stuff as well. So what is a treasure in the middle aisle? Well, I will tell you one of them actually are dried chilies.
Interesting.
Ancho chilies, chili peppers, poblanos. The whole chili is good, or even the spice aisle, the powdered chili or chili flakes you put on your pizza kind of thing. That's really helpful. Even the chili that's in the jars of salsa, hot salsa, can be helpful to you. Now, how is this? Now, I'm giving you the research explanation now. Turns out the chili peppers have something called capsaicin and capsinoid. These are natural chemicals that when you eat, they create the burn of chili, right? That zing on your tongue. Now, chili, the capsaicin binds on your tongue to a receptor. It's called TRPV1. Don't worry about the Latin. Let the scientists deal with that. But I just want to give you the mental image of the hot, the spicy chemical that's naturally present in chili peppers turning on a switch that's on your tongue. That switch sends a signal to your brain, all right? And then your brain, it tells your brain to release a couple of things. The one thing it releases is endorphins, feel-good hormones. That's why some people are addicted to spicy food. You like it makes you feel good.
Yeah.
All right.
My little brother is like obsessed.
Right.
Yeah.
So his brain is releasing more or endorphins. But the second signal, the second hormone that the brain releases is much more interesting. It releases noradrenaline, norepinephrine. Now that is a stress hormone. So fight or flight. You're either going to put your dukes up or you're going to run away. All right. Well, that's an organ, that's a hormone that your brain will release that causes you to vasodilate and to sweat. That's why when you eat really hot stuff, you start to, your nose runs, you flush, right? That's kind of, those are fighting words, right?
Yeah.
So that's actually why chili peppers do that. But the other thing that the new science of the metabolism teaches us is that the noradrenaline, that norepinephrine, runs down nerves from your brain down to your brown fat. It turns on the space heater fat in your body.
Wow.
And when it fires up your space heater fat, you're burning down fuel from excess body fat, especially visceral fat. So this is where the good fat can fight bad fat, and you're eating it in chili peppers.
Wow. Fascinating. So Mexicans, man, because they eat a lot of that stuff.
There's a lot of people across different parts of the world, Southwest Asia, China, Vietnam, Thai, Latin America.
Yeah, you're right.
Right, lots of fiery Calabrian chilies. There's a lot of fiery chili. I know you like to cook, so
Yeah.
me too. So we can talk about that. Different genres, different cuisines incorporate hot chili peppers, and maybe that's a cultural. Going back to history, maybe that's kind of why chili peppers made their way into cuisine.
Yeah.
Because there was some inherent intuitive benefits to it.
Yeah. I remember reading a study a couple of years ago that people who habitually consume spicy foods have reduced risk of early mortality.
That's right.
Might actually help you live longer.
That's right. That's right. And so we're starting to really kind of put together a picture and understand some of the mechanisms of why that might be. And activating your metabolism is clearly one of them. Fighting off that extra body fat, fighting off the ability to actually have fat, inflammatory fat that spills over to your liver and makes it harder to detoxify your blood. All these things, this picture starts to make sense.
It's fascinating. I'm thinking about Japanese cuisine. They don't really make use of chili peppers.
No, but Japanese cuisine uses other ingredients that can actually activate your brown fat as well.
Interesting.
All right. So, for example, kombu, which is used in miso soup. That little square dark seaweed that's pieces that are in your miso soup. That's kombu. It's kind of seaweed, and actually it contains fucoxanthin, which is a natural substance that's present in seaweed. That activates your brown fat.
Wow.
Okay. And fish. Japanese cuisine eats a lot of fish as seafood as their protein. Omega-3 fatty acids activate your brown fat, fight your harmful white fat. Actually, what's amazing, omega-3s actually start to convince white harmful fat to convert and grow more brown fat.
No way.
Yeah. Yeah, they basically try to get the white fat to switch sides.
Do we know why brown fat is brown? Like, why do they call it that?
Because it contains, so to fire up that space heater, it needs to have basically nuclear engines that can actually fire up the heat. Now, the engines in our cells, in the human cell that fires up, is called the mitochondria. Okay, mitochondria. So I remembered it when I was in med school. It fires it up, and the mitochondria has a lot of iron in it, and iron is brown.
Wow. Never knew that.
packed with these nuclear engines, packed with a lot of iron.
Wow. Mitochondria are rich in iron.
That's right.
We really are star stuff. You know, the fact that like iron, it's such an essential part of us. Crazy. In your book, I noticed you talk a lot about a Mediterranean diet. What's that about?
All right. So, of these 150 foods that I labeled, that you can find them in every section of the grocery store: produce aisle, middle aisles, the beverage section, and of course the seafood section. Not to forget that part of it. I take people through this, and what I wanted to do is provide a little bit of cohesion for people that are reading my book to say, well, how do you put all this into action? So what kind of food are you talking about? And so I get asked all the time, Dr. Lee, you study food as medicine, you're in pretty good shape. Tell me what diet you're on. And I mean, I can't tell you the number of times I'm asked this by people. And what I tell people always, what I answer is that I'm not on a diet. I don't go for diets. I don't think they're sustainable. They're not always, most of them are not very healthy. And some of them are fad and not based on science. And I'm all about inner health. But the other thing I'm all about, I really enjoy the taste of food. Like I respect food. I respect the traditions of food, and I love to explore different kinds of tasty foods. That's something I grew up with. You know, I have an Asian background. I grew up eating Chinese food. I lived in the Mediterranean. I took a gap year before I went to medical school.
Wow.
I lived in Italy and in Greece. So I've walked the walk, and this was so long ago, long before people actually even talk about the Mediterranean diet. And I was there to study food, culture, and health, like how it all integrated together. So for me, there's the joy of eating actually involves naturally looking at genres of food that fit with either Asian cuisine or Mediterranean cuisine. And I would wager that most people who might look at my book would say, you know what, I can get into that. I like Japanese, I like Chinese, I like Thai food, or I like Italian food, I like Greek food. I mean, they're popular cuisines. But the amazing thing from these large epidemiological studies is that these genres of cuisines are among the healthiest in the world, among the oldest in the world, and among the most developed in terms of culinary culture, right? So they go way back. So I call it Mediterranean. So how do you eat then? I eat Mediterranean style. That's who I am. It's not some fancy fusion blend, okay? I might be Asian, it might be Mediterranean, it might be a blend. I don't know. When I'm cooking something, I sometimes think, can I tear a page from the playbook of each to create something that's good for myself? And so people go, oh, well, that sounds really cool, Mediterranean. And it does roll off your tongue nicely. But the key actually is it's not brand new. And I love history. I think we're so informed by our history. Mediterranean is like 2,000 years old. Why? Because 2,000 years ago, the Mediterranean and Asia was connected by the Silk Road. It's the greatest trading route in human history, where it's a desert caravan. People are going back and forth between the Mediterranean and Asia, and they were meeting each other and exchanging and selling ingredients, trading recipes, sampling of each other's cuisines. And so this goes way back, long before processed foods, where people were much more in touch with their bodies. And I think that's really kind of like what I wanted to bring out is that, the idea of actually eating to be your diet, elevating your metabolism, using the new science isn't just newfangled stuff.
Yeah.
If you like to eat, check out my book, because it's packed with the ingredients as well as some recipes that will actually make you salivate because it just tastes good.